Stíomh tróna. Is Muireann Ní Chonaill agus is cúis áthas dom fáilte a chur roimh chuig an chomhrá seo idir Manchán Magan agus Clíodhna Ní Anluain mar ceiliúradh de Seachtain na Gaeilge. Beidh Manchán agus Cliodhna ag cadrah faoi leabhar Manchán, 32 words for field. Cógordas as an leabhar sóir seo a Manchán. Is dócha gur tháinig an leabhar seo ag an am ceart. Mar a therefore bhí sé tráthúil. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here this evening to enjoy a conversation between Manchán Magan and Cliodhna Ní Anluain. My name is Muireann Ní Chonaill. I am the Arts Officer with Laois County Council, and we are here to celebrate Seachtain na Gaeilge in your company. Manchán and Cliodhna will have a conversation about Manchán's best-selling book, 32 Words for Field. I think it is fair to say that the book came at the right time for us all. Beidh Cliodhna ag tacht chun ar bhéile litríochta Leaves a stúrú a mína hauna. Cliodhna joins us as director of the Leaves Festival of Writing and Music in November, and we wish to welcome her warmly. Any comments or questions you may have are welcome, and you can join in the conversation. We are recording this event for future broadcast. On behalf of my colleagues in the Arts Office, the Library Service, the Dunamaise Arts Centre, I'd like to thank you for joining us. And I now hand over to Cliodhna to start the conversation. Mhuichas live as for Gaeilge.
Gur míle magat Muireann agus gur míle magat an gurre hug to Dom. Thank you very much for the lovely invitation you've given me for Seachtain na Gaeilge, that lovely fortnight in March that kicks off this month between winter and spring, really, I suppose, in Ireland, and particularly important this year, I think, more than ever. Agus mór agam sa bheadal a caint sa chomhrá le Manchán Magan. Is fada a bhí me breanú agus a fechant as géisle a chudabre. I'm a great follower of your work, Manchán, so it's a pleasure. We haven't spoken formally before. So tá sé andas an seo Mission Blau Clia agus Tosa now taken Ella, and everybody who's tuned in, who's watching in, all in different places. And maybe that in itself reflects the multi-layers of this book, that it brings us oid gahoit Ella, you know, o hema go tema, theme to theme, through a rollicking, rolling pages of material that's sort of highly researched and seems to trip off the tongue as though it's a fluently done thing, and a huge achievement in that. To hear the fluency in such a book, one always knows huge work has gone into it. So Tossam with a kind mar sin Manchán agus her term is even dom ver kind let and show. Tedal on Laois, the book of the title of the book was the first thing that I noticed when I saw it in Books Upstairs, was the first place when we were still able to go into bookshops, which was Rud Alling even, nach Federlinian if we allow her. And then the sort of the byline, the lost words of the Irish landscape. Cén fan title agus cén fáhan sin a chuirtú an písa eile leis?
Well, ma bhíle buchas Cliodhna agus do Muireann nas na focail na sin. Tá sé aisteach, so ní eicem an noch fechna ach glacham gwylad around, mar a chéanam ar a bhín sailt simúra stocha. One accepts the audience is there, although there's like a big lights in a theatre, one doesn't quite see them. So bhí an bun quin cap seo of Anigam. I had this basic idea that there is so much to be said. There's so much that I wanted to say about the Irish language that doesn't get said. And really, it's because I had spent so long traveling. I'd spent like whatever, a year in Africa, a year in India, a year in South America. Agoni, aglorig travana exula, travana via imel, always looking for, people and cultures that were on the edge, that were keeping their old tradition alive. Agus, gachor yenme, a few tresh na blianta shins in Africa and in America has. Then I went and made TG Car documentaries, in China, going out and minority people in China, in the Middle East, and everywhere I saw these people absolutely rooted to their land, to their culture, to their tradition, to sustainable ways of living in fragile environments. And it always struck me, that's the same in Ireland. But why do we never talk about the Irish language in those terms? Why do we never say that we have this language that is utterly rooted to the soil, to the fields, to the landscape, to this, as I said, this sustainable way of surviving in a very fragile, very difficult Atlantic rocky island. And I wanted to capture that. And I knew that, and I knew people weren't really saying it, but then it was such a struggle. It took 6 years to write this book because I thought, how am I going to say this without sounding wishy-washy or new age, and without repeating things that other people say about the language? And eventually, after 6 years, I had stripped so much away. I had written so many different chapters and different pieces and just stripped it away. And I had something very small and very slim. And I gave that to a publisher. And I just thought, okay, I want to now, I've been living inside this book for 6 years. I hope someone else will be able to see a clean line through it. And obviously, as usual, I sent it to a few publishers and, you know, most of them rejected it. But Gil thought this is valuable. Now, we're going to put this book out as a hardback. And then they saw a title. I think I just, the Irish book was my title for it. I kept it there now. Tá an rud gohfuil tú a díreú ná an talamh agus an timpeallacht. The thing, they saw that what I was trying to focus on basically was landscape. And so it was them who came up with the 32 words for fields. Whether 32 is a political reference, whether it's a song reference, I don't know. I went with it. But then I wanted, that bin rud nihul tirul creol. That was an earthy thing. But then I wanted something that clicked into, not only are we looking at the environment and the physicality and the ecology of Ireland, but the spiritual too, the psychological. So the subtitle I'm adding, I'm just checking what the subtitle is, Durtulum, Lost Words of the Irish Landscape. Yeah. Bhíon dá down this is soon.
Agus I know tá an focal sin lost. No imi amu, no cailte, imi stray, cadé, tá sé tucumid chuige sin balbeg. Ach, na cabadíle fad, chomá, is don go carcha cúig cabadíle an. Agus is seo mis me agahhuirí gra simagam sitli in a churtu chuige, on structure, the structure you gave the book in a sense, because it also makes it very readable, very engaging. You can go with a piece and leave it, or you can run into another one or whatever. So it's very beautiful. Each chapter has one word. And I was nearly imagining I could hear it as a chant from yourself. Gaeilge. You know, it would have been an interesting Gaeilge Murger Hulame early. So that she symbol to Tlishin. Homa Kene the Hivana Tadina egg Steve Dugan, he'll make Hanishichin Leshan Lauren or Hanishid Rivreno. How did they come about, the images in the book as well? Because they're again very tidy, like the book itself.
Yeah. And I said the tidiness was what took the 6 years, to find the shape. So Múnam Scrínoracht in the Irish Writers' Centre, I teach writing, and I always tell my students, I tell them how they could get a chance of getting on Sunday Mishalani was the main thing that every student wants to know. And that's getting trickier and trickier to get onto RT. But then I'd say to them, look, the one thing you need to think about is in this age, in this new age, so Rain Nua Tan Michigan, Kahamid Sween of a Goni and Nuch Fechna, agus Nuch Lehoirach, agus Nuch Deishtochte. John Irving, who wrote Cider House Rules and the War Word According to Garp, back in the 80s, he was saying, I am only competing with television. He says, I have to compete with television. So when he was writing those books, every page he was trying to keep people on the page. Agus inis Muireann sin, tá irid sin rudí go bhfuil míid equivalent leis. There are so many things vying for readers' attention span now, from the internet, from television, from Twitter, from Instagram. So I realized there was an awful lot I wanted to say. I desperately wanted to say. It was in my heart. I needed to say this. I'd been waiting 25 years to find a way of expressing things that were really vague and fragile and deep in my heart that I wanted to express. And I knew there's no point. I'm going to lose the listeners. Nobody wants to read a book about the Irish language. On Rudga Gahmisha Denev, na a fear gunta, na lamed Piogavana Hort, kind of, they give these little sucker punches to people. Make sure that I had condensed what I wanted to say into the smallest possible, most impactful little tablet that they could get. Agus tigim shifu, ta larmor, ta raishamor lower. Lahashme Laba, the Gossamishan camera. If we turn the camera over to my bed, you'd see this big pile of books, because I'm currently writing a second book for Gil about landscape. And I am trying to do the same, digest so many books into little readable chapters. So I go to bed at night, you're spending all your day on your computer or in my vegetable garden, and then I go to my bed. Agus beidir give me an fihinnomit lo lachur a clige gom gadin dúlan na sula. I have about 20 or 30 minutes before I fall asleep. And that's my time for reading. And the great accomplishment is if you felt that you read a chapter before you go to sleep. So I decided my chapters need to be 3 pages long, no more than that, 3 foolscap pages, or 3 Google Doc pages, I suppose now. And that was the rule I set for myself. So I'd start at big 15-page ones, and I would whittle them down until I had the essence. Agus an son nor a hog gil on Laois, higador an Rudkena, so yenador an text untach more. Gil has made the text very big in this book, so they're more than 3 pages. They're probably about 5 or 7 pages long. And then they decided, again, they realized in their heart, God, we're trying to publish an Irish language book that, never should have sold. Irish language books don't sell books about the Irish language, but they just said, let's sweeten it. Let's have these beautiful drawings. And because this is a work about integrity, let's not have computer-made drawings. Let's have actually woodcuts or lino cuts. And Steve Dugan, this is his work. This is his métier. So it was just a wonderful idea that they decided let's make a piece.
Yeah. Well, brother Todd asked we know go nach me better wear an báper chomá agus go genuine pauper le well cad there gar good sé cinálta than timpachcht chomá on pauper is all very environmentally friendly and all, so it is true to its messaging, I suppose. The rather tani as fi chomá. Is dói an bailach leis on gléineocht agus an snasa fad atá an leabhar, the beautiful polish of it. By the way, I asked me credit rawa yena piece couple of pieces book lehorta yena doing. So you're going to do a short reading to just give us a blash, I suppose, a blast of the nature of the book and how wonderfully it flows. So better go gorha sin in achne agus piecing book a lay of cooking.
Taglor. So Tom compete mere biog a lave, jutta biog a lave o Carus Tree Schlied on Laois. I'm going to read a piece from the chapter called Wave, and it looks at the whole concept. Basically, every project, every topic is so vast when you're talking about language and landscape. But I just decided to focus on one particular wave, and so I'll read it. The word teascán refers not only to a cliff with a particular moaning wave on Valentia Island, but also a glass of spirits or the quantity of any liquid poured into a vessel. It suggests a generous amount of liquid, as in the state of being reasonably full or more than half full, or of flowing bountifully as well. There's an optimistic sense of plenty to teascán without ever suggesting excess. I've heard it used to describe a fairly large quantity of liquid, such as milk or beer, but also of butter or lime or hay or other materials that are not entirely solid, but they sort of flow. A core element is that it always implies that there is room for more. It suggests enough or even plenty, but never excess, never too much. Its root meaning is pouring or flowing. The malleability of meaning encompassed by teascán suggests, again, the Irish language similarity to waves in the sea, more than to a specific linguistic code of communication. The word Cliodhna describes the way chat and gossip can run through a community, while also being used for the small ripples running through the middle of a swollen stream or river, or for any eddying current or sea. And there's many ways of describing that Cliodhna. Likewise, the phrase Taring an Nuas means both introduction of a topic of conversation and a groundswell of waves dashing against rocks. Tulka can mean both speaking fluently and a large sea wave. It also means a horn-led charge. The thing about waves is they are unique, each one different from the next, and yet all are connected as a whole, working on a far greater scale than we can readily imagine. The tsunami in the Indian Ocean in 2004 sent water rising in wells around Ireland, as was recorded at a hydrographic monitoring station in Kilkenny, and reported then by Paddy McArdle, former director of the Irish Geological Society. The tsunami was caused by something else entirely, separate and far away, off the west coast of Sumatra, where tectonic plates that had been grinding for thousands of years suddenly cracked, causing trillions of tons of rock to move with the power of 23,000 Hiroshima-type atomic bombs. Everything is separate, yet everything is connected.
Agus scrí mé an aber sin, síos agus mé an athléamh an méid a bhí le léamh agatsa. Mar tá an túram sin, that thought, everything is separate, everything is connected. Tá an snáhín sin síos tríd an leabhar ar fád agat. Agus is cinál Albert Lárnach sa leabhar. It's a central theme, that notion that everything is itself, but it's also interconnected and interdependent. And each word has layered meanings. Agus, tá sé fear hever é sin. A chuir sé goibhneam chuma de chúl ra hain ar lí, gohfuil an irid sin leibhéalaine isteach sa tír seo agat, agus iad casta agus contráilte a chéile, agus annach chuid den méid sin híl mé go méid gorá sé de thuaisteach san ábhar ar líidir ar a chéile tharnam líonta, agus beidir go leabhar beag an on faoi sin. About this multi-layeredness of your own life and also that of the language and that of the loss in a way, maybe that you're talking about.
Oh God, tan question comb more, son. That question is so vast. I thought I had an agenda.
You could do it by way of example. You could answer it by maybe way of some examples, maybe.
Oh, there's too many lovely ways I want to answer it already in my head. But first, like I thought I had an agenda in writing this book. Agus capas gur has to go and curry láthir an taobh spiridálta than sell. I thought I wanted to get across the spiritual element of life. But actually, that was one of the elements. But really, it's something bigger. And as I say, I'm now writing this book on landscape. If this book was about language, the next book is about landscape. Agus an rud go bhfuil soléir dom ná. As much as you go back into our past, the more global, the more international it becomes. If you trace any root in our mythology, in our laws, in our biology, in our DNA, in our landscaping, in our farming techniques, you're going right back to the Ur tribe, to the one group that came out of Africa, were in the Fertile Crescent, and then spread across the world. Mar a derim sa leabhar, tá irid sin focail sa Gaeilge atá bunathe nó fréamhathe Hinduish, that are the same words that are said in Hindu, so many Irish words. Our legal system has these uncanny similarities. Our folklore system, our religious system, our gods, Govinda and Boinda. Boinda, the great god of the boy in river, is the same as Govinda, the great Hindu god, a form of Krishna. In the same way as we had, the Tuatha De Danann were our ancestors. They're possibly the fairies. They are the Tuatha, the people of Day, of Dia, of God, of the Danu, of the Anu. And Anu was a mother goddess, either Danu or Anu, of India and of Ireland and of the whole place in between. She was the original matriarchal mother god. So if we go into where since the 19th century, the Irish language has been about náisiúnachas, a chef díru go cún.
What I'm interested in, Manchán, is about Tuhain. Your own dealing with that earthly gur féidir leat structúr agus ard agus agur martha déantach de choréir de réir chéile. Bhfuil is agad. Mar tuchamid cuidas na pointí tá tú déine ag gan nóid a chu híh cíala dhéanamh an saoil sin ina bhfuil leibhéil ina agsúla deimhna gceist. É sin rud a tháinig chugad de réir chéile nó rud ag an dóla a bhí anna a gcónaí. Tá gceist is dóid agam.
An dárad, like, I can't answer that question without referring to your father, but before going to your father, so rugach me sin now nach brug, agus nuair bhí óg bhí saoil bhí cosabháin agam sa dá héal, sa saoil segus sa saoil eile. So as a young man growing up in Donnybrook, I had these internal voices, this connection to a spirit world always inside me. And I maintained that because you can keep on that sort of mystical imagination right through school. But then you come to the Leaving Cert and they tell you have to have a career. And I went to a Jesuit school and I rebelled at that. I understand the spiritual world. I understand how I fit into that. I don't understand how I fit into the real world. So I knew how to express those things. And then I go to college in the first year UCD and I'm utterly lost by having to look for a career and go into the real world. And so your father, Owen O'Hanlon, and some other people in the Department of Irish advised me, just don't worry, don't fret, go off, do what you want. So I went off to Africa for a year. And that was the moment that I realized that this spiritual insight that I had, this way I had of seeing the world, actually most of the world saw life, at least, you know, when I arrived in Morocco and then going to Algeria and going to the rest of the countries, people were rooted in their own landscape, in a landscape that was timeless. The images I was seeing, these were the same images that we had seen in our school books from the life of Jesus. And that was revelatory for me. I thought, haha, there's a way of living grounded in the life on things that have substance. And I came back to college and I had all of these ideas swirling through my mind about spirituality, about rootedness, about tribes. And again, it was your father, it was Onahan, who took me into his office and said, write a book. And I was petrified, absolutely petrified. If only I had the little book, it's over there, that I published. That year, he was the first man to read it and help me. And he gave me travel books by Trusca Tunis was one of the books by a woman, a great woman writer, Una, some of the other. And he gave me these books, and I still have his copies of the books that he lent me. And I started writing a book called Manchán Shachran o Shanlari o London Africa Shanlari Arnhem or something. A really raw book, trying to capture my first glimpses of this wider world and how that connected with my own sort of spiritual confusion. And I said I wrote that in 93, and then I only published it, Cushcane published it in 98. And then after that, yeah, go on, Cliodhna.
No, well, sa tlísin tá gceist gur seans gur chur an scríbhneoireacht crot de thuairimíocht, bhfuil is agad, mar bégan dit crot éigen na chorafra, de chuin éigen eile, don tíomh máthapar, seachas é bheith in bheanach, you know, had to come from the internal externally, bhfuil is agad, agus gur an skill sin a ólamas mar sin. Tá daoine rihan lom, tá daoine sa leabhar, agus is das mehar a chluisteáil, agus is níor mé súla sin, so tá sé sin go deas gur magad. Ach, there are people in the book, there are people in most books, and again there's the selection process of who you include and why. You have to make a decision. Tálín sé sin a gcónaí. Agus ris sé liom coppla déanacha sin a lua. Ní sé nói tá na taobh sí ó de chlán, tá na sprid sin cuideacha gur lín ar fad, cuideacha mar gúil siad cho mór sin, cho éireannach, aber go siad sáirte sa tír seo, people like the poet Egon Arahale, to me would be a page in a book. But he's a relative, direct relative of yours. The O'Rahale is some big, amazing figure to me from history, but he was a direct relative of yours, much closer than Egon O'Rahale. Na daoine seo is cuid the Hailid, is daoine a tháinig isteach sa machas na tithe in rá the chlán in the gcónaí aber. The O'Rahale and his car, for example, is a public thing for other people, but it's the private things and possessions of your family. So tá sé sin ar fad fear himúil. Ach ar nóid tá Sheila Humphreys an sin, the Wamo, mór mílteach mar character, ban chomá, agus I luan tuí sin sa leabhar chomá. So agus an sin tá daoine eile Courtney Chahan, Bob Quinn, Nuala Ní Chonaill. Bhhailm sa mar gur aisteach agus gur all-in on scale, a dinis tú faoi we'll take them out of the blue. I'm going to pull them out of a hat as though I'm not going to put them in any order, because in a way that's how we think about people in lives and who influence us. Courtney Chahan, Laurlam Fuhi Shin, Oberlin Fui Courtney Chahan. Tell us about Courtney Chahan.
So Courtney Chahan was living, when I knew her, she was living in a little, what is that word? A cabin, no, what's it called? A little,
Porta cabin.
A porta cabin, yeah. There was a word, what did we call it? Chalets, didn't we? You know, in West of Ireland, the government, the local authority would build a chalet, a very light little wooden thing. And her chalet is still there. It's right beside Radio na Gaeilge in Muireann Ní Anluain. Later, she was able to build a house in Muireann, and that house is still there too. But she was an ex-Blasket Islander. Well, no, her father was a famous and a well-respected Blasket Islander. And, you know, not everybody was nice. So my grandmother, you know, went with the O'Rahale and with her family to the Blasket Islands in 1912. And they realized, just like any community, you know, there were lazy people there and inspiring people. There were grumpy people and lovely people. But Courtney Chahan's father was the life and soul of the party. And so when then they moved to the mainland in 1957, when they were forcibly evacuated. Clíodhna Khan went off to service in Springfield, Massachusetts, and she got a job then, in service sort of as a maid, but then got a job in a bakery. And so I knew her just as a retired woman. She'd come home and was living in Muireann, and she was this wonderfully warm, chatty woman, Clíodhna Khan, and that was her pre-marriage name. And she was living with her husband, who must have had emphysema. He had oxygen. He'd have to breathe through oxygen. So he was often at home smoking and breathing through oxygen, as far as I remember. But everyone else, all the other men weren't at home. They were down at Binding Out at the pier, watching the younger men putting the boats, fixing the nets and putting the Laois out to sea. But she just was curious about young people. She loved young people, And
agus le seo chur ggóhéad is dóigh bhfuil is ag go ládaíine tá géisteach. Nuair bhí tá do bhúchail beag óg chaá ceirhí nó mar sin I gcurcha gaomhne agus héochtú ar scáil mar sin. Term an tairí deirhin, mana?
Dírecha, sin é.
An bog Herman.
Sin é. Yeah, so mar dúirtú.
Yeah.
The trí charúdum sale caite in Naunach Brook in Donnybrook for 2/4 of the year, and then the other quarter down in West Kerry. Agus bhí an daibh umlán agsúl gan out idir an dárod. Gaeilge ceann bháin agus béarla las musa ceann eile. But I have to say, although there was obviously English outside in the place in my upbringing in Donnybrook, there was only Irish within the house. But this West Kerry installa, this injection I would get of other culture and other knowingness once a year was so profound. And Clíodhna Khan was just this wonderfully warm woman. Agus ní go dtí beidir 20 bliana níoga gur hiigme an éireacht agus an cultúr a thug siad agus an tionchar a bhí cé orm. It was only maybe 20 years later that I understood the impact of having this ex-Blasket Island woman, or this woman at least from a Blasket Island family, in my life, so close, that the stories she was telling me and the songs she'd sing, and just the humming she'd do, the mindset that she would communicate was a Blasket Island mindset, and that was profound. And it was only nígadí go raibh mise den of clárcha taistil imid a hár satín I beidir Savilian Há Vila. I was making a TV series in China with my brother in the year 2000. We were in Taiwan, agus bhíamar a bula le buim don group the Yamu people on Laois Island. And these are Polynesian people who've always been sea people going from island to island, just like the Blasket Islanders, went from the mainland to Blasket. They were always coastal people. And as you say, as Bob Quinn would say, had maybe come up the whole way from Spain or North Africa centuries or thousands of years before. But I realized there was this connection between the lore that the Yami people, these Polynesian island people, would sing me and tell me their stories about their coastal beginnings, the beginnings of their tradition, were the same as what we had in the west of Ireland. And it made me appreciate it more, and made me try and scramble for my brain to reimagine the mindset that Clíodhna Khan had given me.
A thug si rotáhacht a eile bit, agus tá rís tá meafar ar chlí She Street in Laois. Agus is ban fuair me mise, bí me gobar an radio, agus a tafa a daine agus a gagahórach is mar sin. Agus so ar nói chua an meafar seo nó an scéal seo faoi flúr, faoi chalarí, a bhaim gomórarm sa Laois. Agus went to an úsáid as. This is Clíodhna Khan put you baking. Maybe you were baking at home anyway, but they were very trendy things that we only saw on Sesame Street. Murder to Fame, fi Cookie Monster agin Sesame Street. Tóga miisiil Sesame Street chomar nói agus mis a haar agus there to peanut butter cookies agus the chocolate chip cookies agus eile héidir sin. Ach si sin ar siú le sin seans hís géirí yapper agus hosa tosa in sin a bááil seans im lá clia a chuir tú plúr hit plúr in a calorie agus thosaí an flúr dasa nó a boga ar chliéigen. Learnum faoi sin because it's a gorgeous this idea of flower dancing or moving but making sense and individualizing language and sound through it. But it was something you came upon. Laois, I'm not going to say it.
Yeah, so mar dúirtú is meafar iad na rudaí seo, agus an rud atá chomh dachar ná rudaí atá chomh tebi a chuir teasla, go háirde I bhuidim focle agus go háirde nuair nach bhíon gotach tí leanach. So dírig tú hana féin gur dhéanas charachtarí do riine, so níor luigh me má bháthir, agus gan dad bhí má bháthir, well, luam mór na hói, ach chuirm príomh béim Micheanna bháir Sheila Humphreys. Ach an that bhí an vertical díra cótáchtach le na chéile. So as I say, when you're compacting all of these big ideas, you have to condense things. And so I don't mention my mother much. I mention my grandmother a lot more. And then I was scratching my head. Conas a godur cin trasna on slíise go gapam go bhfuil an Gaeilge difriúil na Shetella. I was trying to work out, how do you communicate that Irish is different, that its frequency is even different? It is, you know, Hungarian has a lower frequency, Chinese has a very high frequency, Irish has a frequency tá idir miniciocht atá I lár idir atara. Irish has a sort of middling frequency. And I thought, I want to get this alive for people. And I thought Radio na Gaeltachta was such a key thing for me growing up, because I would be in my sort of depression or in my chaos, even as a teenager, and I'd switch this on and it would soothe me. Something would come out of the calorie, foin vech, rhythm vech, bioch, na finavega, the dukkach machas and caloros and radio, garakach Weimar. Something would emerge from Radio na Gaeltachta, the words that would ease my soul, that would have an effect on me. And I was trying to communicate this in the book in simple language. And I just remembered that when I was a ferocious little baker, my family used to call me Plubbera when I was young, Plubbera, in this lovely non-PC way. Plubbera basically means fatso. And I wasn't that fat. Like, I probably had a tiny bit of puppy fat, but I was just Plubbera, because I liked my cookies and I was Plubbera, fatso for eating my cookies. And I constantly, every weekend, probably pretty friendless as well, I would just bring a bácáil go baile. Agus is cuilam uirmháin gur marador to hit an plúir a bhíos a bácáilis an galara, as thosnig sé rinca, agus thosnig sé kshahu na kshahanna diavarach eve na shot. It started making, when the flour dropped onto the speakers, it started making these beautiful, complex, geometrical shapes that at the time it didn't strike me. Only later, when I moved here to Westmeath, where I am now, just as I said, down the road from Lough Crew, that I realized that those geometric shapes that I saw the flower make were actually very similar to rock art, to Celtic rock art, systems of spirals and spheres and dots. And I don't know, can one make sense out of that, but I just wanted to put them into the book to try and make the audience maybe make leaps.
Yeah, no, that's sin all in our fana sé lom. So it is a lovely way of communicating something visually that is actually to do with sound. So it's a fantastic achievement to have carried that through the book. It's lovely. Luan tú Lough Crew an sin. Agus lu mis characteri. Ertlí is characteri no aber punkan the she street in Laur id áitine sa Laur choma. Agus ertlí úsáid an tuid siadam le rudí agsúla chur anúl. Tá da chudáma I Lough Crew mar hampla. Agus chuirtú gubna dom bhí mé géisteach le Sean Boylan an sin a caint le Tommy Tiernan, fhí mar thula mé chonig méid tú hain le Tommy Tiernan le déine. Ach bhí Sean Boylan an sin a caint chundé na mí, seans go bhacha tú éile sam. Agus é a caint cecho sáte I gundé na mí is atá sé, agus gur an chundé riaga tá an as mar sin, agus gur sé chotáach. Sa lí chéine tá an tas a bel doris san iarmhí, ach an rud céine gur áit sean ása in éan I láir na tíre, rud na goibhnín muid ar a gcónaí. Níor a sean an tá céin leis an le imil na tíre. Nuair heachtaí isteach an is dal gohhanatí seán go chuir siad na préomh chu síos is mar sin. Ach leabhar an tosa go mór faoi na plúisina, faoi chol a tochailteach sa féchant na háit na timpplair de Lough Crew, agus bhís is muidir sin ar an saoil agat hain an sin. Áit na eile luan tú ná náid bailá clia dúna brochas mar sin an Afric huí, agus hí mé hain chuirtú Gulliver's Travels fiú goibhna am amatí, agus mé dul attáiste leatcatís na háitna éagsúla seo, bhí sé even ar fad slí sin. A beidir go leabhar lom, chuú go Lough Crew, chuú gus cheanna tú tachan sin. Agus is dal bhfuil is ag go lántaí ar nó gur cheanna tú coppla acra talún as mar sin. Ach I the leabharing tú faoi dul a siúl agus dul a rothíocht as a chorátan hirirach éagsúil. Mar tá sé sin éagsúil ar fad ó hiirí aber agus ó le clia. Agus ceir a bhí ar siúlann sin agus ar nói na focaling Gaeilge atá luirte agus sa leabhar a tháinig gas ar scríbhneoir sin faoi Lough Crew beidir.
Sure. agus níos dá bhéting smaoinemh ar an písa sin sa leabhar. Tá písa bhain sa leabhar ó an seanachas mór. So tá is againn gur tugach na sean smaointe agus an tólas a bheith gin an seanam, tugach lino ó email na seanacha, ó béal go béal harna glóinte. So the ancient information we know has been passed down to us from the seanacha, from the storytellers. And there's a great thing from the seanachas more. How do you remember information? I can't remember the quote now. It is remembered through the land. You know, what are the greatest wisdom we have? They're in the land and they're in the language. So on Tolas Galéir, go bhfuil goin, fui níhaván na rudí practicúla, ach gan dátu chin comar, rudí fui conas fermór, conas éiscach, conas marachtan sa láitse. So the practical information about how to fish, how to farm, how to live is encoded in the landscape and in the language, but also the spiritual dimension, the idea, the wider dimension of who we are beyond the physical body, I believe is encoded within these things. So, an cúisce cho misisiúil ná bhís a denmh iirecht tuisce níos fearáil an féin, an na smaointe cí réibecha le stig the magan a chiúnú. So the reason I walked was trying to understand the world, trying to calm the chaotic thoughts inside my own mind. But as I walked, I understood that I was connecting with something deeper, something that soothed me, something that healed me. I didn't know what. Agus hig mention, gur sin díirichan rud céanna ginean our nairach. This is the same thing our heritage does. It sets us out walking the land or connecting with the land, because from that land will rise up energy in a vague way, but also factual information. And that's all very, tá sé sin gléir on it hebi agus dachar a hiiscint agus feidir a fréamhú. We can root all those vague ideas in the idea of loganimnacha, of the din shanachas. So if we look at just place names and the information that's in place names and how a place name is a key, like mar ucker is feidir an ucker sin a chasa agus os go loit to réim se eile don dawan. You can open new realms by going in through the loganimnacha. And that's really what I wanted to most access in this book, looking at landscape and looking at the place names as a way in. And you know, it's the same, it's sort of similar in some ways to how the Aboriginal Native Americans, it's different, but it is in some ways similar to how the Aboriginal Australians have this connection to their land, the song lines or the Churunga lines. And these lines, they are songs or words that they recite, or even sounds that they recite as they walk the land. And it brings forth information about waterholes, about landmarks, about sea level change from millennia ago. And
now, Darren agus tú dul siúlann sin, just for those again who haven't maybe read the book yet, or Mona Will and Laois Agi, tá an soléireacht lena scríban tú ríis. It's just totally seductive. Tá sé all in. You know, it wraps the simplicity of what you got to say, something very complicated. It's just totally enwraps us in something wonderful. So there's the promo for the book to go and get it, you know. Gomaine dine tanavas, sinne tán, hastóch wet on siúl, agus dolamach, agus the whole oscailt. Well, it's like tá piece on a ríis. I wanted to, in one way, rooting it into specifics of the book. Tá piece all in fui aber beidir go bheitha chuirsís an bhar agus gobar sa chort. Agus gobar go deisiil seachas sa tliele. Agus beidir go gurthar síos ar sin. Agus chuir bheitha geiste agus is dói chur is eisiam lear is dói atá ar siúl agus ámsáid sin. Leabhar leat fao sin.
Díirich so díirich agus mé you know, agus mé oignach agus mé caiilte gan ar a hána me go dtíint an tíreach an taobh seo tír ar dúis mardúir tú vis a denmhéirecht aithna chur ar náid agus héin gomininic am rothar suas go lachrú. You know, my first year is 20 years ago when I arrived in Westmeath, I would cycle every direction, little circles out. And one place often was up to Lochrue. And I would meet this man, is it Mike Tormey? No, that's not quite his name. He died now about 8 years ago now, but you'd see him there and he would be cutting the grass with a scythe or with a sickle. No, it was always with a scythe. And nowadays he's dead. And so now there's council workers there and they do the same. They're cutting the grass on either side of the road up to Lochrue, but with a strimmer now. And he said to me always that you should always go, you should always cut the grass anti-clockwise, túhal, in other words, because he said that the grass grows deisial, the grass grows towards the sun, towards the direction of the sun. It goes up towards the direction of the sun. So you with your blade, you come along deisial and you cut it and lop it down. And he said to me, well, at the time he said, but everything else goes deishal. Everything else goes deishal, goes sunwise. He says, when you're casting a net, you throw it deishal. You throw it, when you're winnowing grain, you throw the grain up into the sky and you throw it sunwise. He says, even the solar system and the planets all grow sunwise. And it was such a romantic way of talking that I was nodding and bamboozled by all this. But then suddenly I thought, no, wait there. I know one thing about the planets. The planets don't all go sunwise. Some go left to right. Some go clockwise, some go anti-clockwise. And when I said this to him, he wasn't perturbed at all. He said, "Don't, like, it's about the story. Don't get caught up." But what I loved is now when I go up there and the council, the Meath County Council, there, people that are with their strummers, they're still doing it anti-clockwise, against the sun, which is a beautiful, maybe an instinctive continuation of the tradition.
Well, rud ag an atá deas faoin leabhar, the best books leave us with something, and when the books come back to us that are good, if I could put it that way, when we're out and about or when we're reading another book. So I know that when I will pass fields, I will think of your book. You know, you have done that there are episodes in it that have been visualized to me. And I think the great gift of a good book is that it is visualized because it's something other than script on a page. Agus tá sé sin lán go báir ag an leabhar. A fille an rud sin leabhar if we lost agus down to a gamegan, nach nimín focal. They just maybe fog to read or no scale for tamal aber. Agus down to chomat it luan to fi calog schnachte mar hample. Down to the snowflakes. Gedein she the stach setimpelach the reach. They actually just return to the atmosphere and off they go again and on and that. Agus go shin and rod fin scale. So chance go will solace again sa leabhar chomá go nimín an tangar líoch nachhfuil sé imi ach go bhfuil sé bholach gus go tucha sé rás chugging. Agus chuirtú goibhne chomá chugam on Catcher in the Rye le J.D. Salinger nuair dearch on fifth character sin bhí sé chuna ceisna. He used to be asking the questions about where did the ducks go in Central Park in the winter when the lakes froze over. Ní a túramaging. Ach seans go bhfuil cuitas na focle atá sa leabhar nachhfuil sé sin nach táilte dóibh ach go dtucha siad a rás le mína uaig an eile. Bhfuil agad agus tá sé sin sí tríd an leabhar agad chomáthar lí. Go nachrothaíonn focail. Bhfuil agad agus go bhfuil saoil ag an eile acha. Ach so tá sé dása ceappa gúil tú scríomh leabhar ag an eile. Tá písin beag eile agad beidir is muid tachan déir go méidir go léfa agus gurthééis sin an aithne doin chomá.
Díreach denna cinnte. Agus díreach just an téime sin mar bhí arágat se cinnte mar a dúirte ní riam an taobh dúltach agus ní riam na focail a cailtear mar an rudgad astíonóm sa chuir teasta ná se an fuinemh se an túirim an meoin a talastíir den focail of go bhfuil luchfar domsa agus is féidir lei sin tachtarás cuma céan tanga leabharúid. I mean, bhrisich sem chríd a Gaeilge mí scoil, my capam ní leam tanga gombeach níos úsáití. I think it'd be a tragedy if we lost ours, but it's really the ideas, the concepts, the energetic insights that are behind the language that I would love to see maintained, and I believe they can be maintained. And that bhí an lán rudí dúltach if we in tanga agus fi an mion agus an fuineh a bhí agan for though. There are of course very many negative things about our life long ago too, but I'm focusing in rudí dasa. So lema just piece of gar on capital for fairy words. So focail atá buintach le saoil na sí. It's hard to proceed far into considering Irish without coming to some understanding of this topic. Many Irish words are so imbued with elements of the other world that a speaker really ought to clarify their own relationship with the spirits before attempting to learn the language. Though the idea is derided or denied now, for eons our people believed that fairies lived beneath the earth, and for some people they're still a presence in their lives. Even if you no longer accept the existence of fairies, you cannot help but encounter them in many words and place names. The word for kidnap, for example, is fudach, and you'll hear it regularly on the news to refer to criminal abductions. But that's not what it used to mean. Fudach meant being spirited away or carried off by fairies. That was how earlier dictionaries defined it, but newer publications have conveniently forgotten this. There was a word to describe the empty husk or changeling that was left behind when the fairies whisked away a person's spirit or soul. Typically, it was a defenseless child or an unattached woman who was targeted. This word was Idir, but now that meaning itself has been kidnapped and replaced with something else. Idir has come to mean a remnant or spent residue of something, such as the dregs in a bottle of wine or the crumbs in a toaster. And it's interesting, the two bits I've just read there, they're both bits that I actually said on stage in the Dunamaise last year or 18 months ago when I brought Arán agus Íam, because, you know, tá show drama beagam Arán agus Íam, because tá London smuinte tá sa leabhar seo sa show. So my little play Arán agus Íam, which I'll start performing again as soon as we get out of COVID, where I bake sourdough bread, because been the audience churn butter. Ach ashtach and da piece and da mir fiocmeg or ruddy a greb right Hanna féin an stáitse seo.
Well, nach even agus tugann sin cearcail amláin doing clí. Agus mar chríoch is dói tá abert a bháin eile agat sa leabhar ina deirtú faoi happenings rather than things is what seems to be maybe the more significant. Agus nói is happening on Comhrá se hagging a with a riint le daoine eile. Seachas gur rud é, it's not a thing we can hold physically, because we can't ní féidir lem gur maithagad a rá go physiciúil.
sé níos luch for it, tuis nach fit go physical.
Yeah, so tá sé anna himúil, so téan sé leis, téan na téim is sa leabhar leat go thomlá leis an rud a padénta agin uairach le numar sin. Agus me fear bhuichas diet agus déit mis bheith leanúnta rain í lánach giota beag atá déantaking an seo. Ach a chuirta go mór le a leabhar agus le ár górán seo hanacht.
Ma vile buchas Cliodhna is mór na nóir domsa seo, ca mar aga bhuinas anna hanavas, anna hanavar fá.
Me sé leis. Agus seans is stáilm ní muid críochní go thomláin fós mar is stáilm gúil coppla rud a tachon cinan inis beidir go gur mé. Do I bring you back, Muireann, or do I do these questions, sir?
Yeah, I just if I could see those, please, Ruben, if you don't mind, is it there? The chat, yeah. Okay, yeah, we have it here now. Thank you very much. Well, people are delighted, and there's a lot of comments that have come in over the course of the evening.
Look at that, isn't that fascinating what Caoimhín says about the Punjab? I'd forgotten that. So Panch Ab. So Panch means 5, Cuig, and Fuckle Kene, like even it's the P and the Q Celts. The Welsh for 5 is closer isn't Panch. And then Ab is the same word as Awan. So there are just so many links between this land, you know, and that other part of the world. I hadn't thought about the Punjab, the river in Pakistan before.
Well, on my cycle the other day through Clonaslee, Manchán, I passed over the Awan Garavuk, and the translation on the other side of the road was the Gurra River. I think Garavuk might refer to violence, or you know, that it was a rather fast-moving river. Would you think?
Yeah, exactly. Would you think it's Garav? Yeah, it must be exactly.
Yeah. So it's all around us. It's so lovely. And I think, as Cliodhna said earlier, we will be more conscious, and I am more conscious, I have to say, of the imagery that is evoked when we hear words and hear names of areas and all around us. It's so beautiful. And we've had time, I think, in this pandemic to think about those things and to reflect on them a little bit more. Na rudí atá ar timpeall aran. Just to say that Manchán has books available if people would like to order them, signed copies. Is that right, Manchán?
That's right, yeah.
And what is your email address, please, Manchán, if people would like to contact you?
Yeah, the website is manchán.com. And I have that book, Thirsty Words, and I also have my little book, Sea Tamagotchi, which is just loads. It's a handmade book of gorgeous words from the coast, from the sea. Oh, you know what's lovely is that now, Seachtain Gaeilge, this book is like something that developed out of the previous projects that I've done in Laois over the years, from first bringing Gaeilge Tamagotchi to to the Portlaoise shopping centre.
That's right. The queues of children.
Yeah, so giving out the 4,300 words with 4,300 endangered word for people's characters with the help of Seachtain, who I see is here, and then last year year and a half, bringing Iran Agazim to Dunamaise, which was like all of my favorite ideas from 32 words, but in a way I thought these concepts are too vague. How am I going to contain them and engage people? And I thought I'll give them bread, fresh bread and butter. And then finally I had the courage to bring out the book, and to be able to bring that book back to Portlaoise is really exciting.
Great. And I think you visited one of our reception centres as well, Manchán. You did.
I did indeed, yeah. I'm in the middle of finishing off an exciting project looking at direct provision communities in different parts of Laois, and just interviewing them and finding their take on the world. And I had no idea. I knew that I wanted to look at the people in direct provision accommodation in Laois, but to look at it beyond a political standpoint. So I just asked them about their favorite aspects of their culture at home and their most beautiful landscapes. And it was so moving for me. It was so insightful. So I've recorded a load of information. Now we need to edit all that into little sound pieces.
But we look forward to that. And there are some books, copies of your book available in our local bookshop, All Books and News also. We were informed of that. So that's a wonderful development, because they weren't there last week. So anybody who'd like to get a copy they should find it easy enough.
Yeah. If all books sell out, they're going to have loads more. So it's on its 6th printing, but its 6th printing comes out in 3 days' time. So All Books will have loads of books, even if they sell out what they have now. So
brilliant.
You'll get them in Portlaoise easily.
Well, that's fantastic, because you have a great fan base here, Manchán, and we love to support you and all that you are doing. Cliodhna, buíochas a rís, asach for the choulúdar agus an ihe all in a curtar siúl doing. Thank you to Ruben and to Nick and to Michelle, Laura, and all the crew in the Dunamaise Arts Centre for supporting us in putting on this magnificent evening. Ma bhuíochas live ar fad. Slán go fóla inis.